And how do you be aware?
We all need a combination of love and discipline, in the sense that you want to be in a culture where its values are good, but it has to have boundaries around it. We know you can't run a successful organisation without bringing people together physically. What really makes us happy is not actually knocking the numbers out the park and seeing some spreadsheet looking really great. If I look at my legacy, well, what's made me happiest is when I built a strong team, helped people develop their careers, helped them move on, got them through the difficult sort of phases, and left something meaningful.
If you've got less than 5 years experience, get as much airtime face to face with people around the organisation as much as it lets you.
Exactly right. You're so right. Hi, I'm Will Stratton-Morris. I'm the CEO for Caffè Nero here in the UK. We employ 6,000 people, and this is my Duvet flip.
So how important is actually work experience?
I think that's a great question, because what's really changed over my career is the expectation that you make a decision and stick with it for 10 years is completely gone. You can chop and change. If you're willing to work really hard and commit and engage and get up, you will be so much more successful in whatever you choose to do.
What are some of those leadership techniques?
Effective leaders need to have 3 core capabilities. The 3 are intellect, energy, and empathy. You need to have the brain power to do whatever the job is that you're doing. Then equally, you have to have the kind of drive to stay committed and be resilient, and the ability to relate to other people, to do it without offending people.
What do you think has been your invisible success?
Different leaders will have different definitions of what their invisible success might be. The one thing I think I am quite good at is...
My final question, what's your duvet flip? What gets you out of bed in the morning to flip the duvet?
I think...
che vuoi gira largo da me, non sai che oramai è finita con te, tu sei quella che mi fa passare soltanto chi sei.
So Will, welcome to my duvet flip.
Thank you, Jack. Great to be here.
I needed to hunt you down, and I had to go over how many stores? 600 plus stores across the UK. I was like, right, where's Will? I want him to join us on the show because I think his career is so fascinating, from marketing to CEO and everything you've done in between, from energy to retail and hospitality. I thought, let's get Will on, and we made it happen, right?
Well, you did, and hopefully you had a coffee at each of those stores you went to, because that would have helped my revenue very much.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I know you was due on holiday. We got the plane cancelled so you could be here. And I found out that you like coffee, because obviously you run a coffee shop, and it's a skinny latte, right?
Yeah.
So we've actually got some coffee if you want one.
You are very kind.
Yeah. So it's one of my go-to brands. Obviously, I don't know if you know them, but look at that packaging. It's pretty cool. So.
Oh, look at that.
Look at that, all prepared.
Oh, the delivery service.
Delivered in. Some extra. I'm ripping it apart, but you know what?
We could have used that.
Yeah, but look at that side. Not that side. Look at that looks, that blue. And look at that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I have got a flat white, because I like a flat white.
Oh, good for you.
And anyone who's watching, why don't you just pause the video right now, get on Deliveroo, and order a Caffè Nero. There you go.
That's wonderful advertising, Jack.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And look, I want to start here. Where did you first start your first ever job, your proper job that paid you a bit of money?
Yeah.
And what if Will was going to go and speak to young Will now, what would he be telling him about that job he's doing?
My first ever proper paid job, and I can probably cut lawns actually in my early teens, but was actually at Marks & Spencer. At about 16, I was working a Saturday job in Harrow's store, in the food hall. In those days, when you put things through a till, there was none of these QR codes, and the price was on it. And I remember then, and as I still feel today, actually, I loved it. I absolutely loved that whole kind of retail. It's sort of fast-moving transactional space. I used to train myself to try and look at the trolley coming towards me and actually put all the prices in before the customer even put it on the belt. And then I would say, that'd be £5, £10, pick it up. How do you know that? And I used to love that whole sort of excitement of it. And actually, that first experience, that then translated into me applying for their management program. And indeed, that influenced M&S as a fantastic, retail service brand has remained with me. I learned a lot of that, and I learned a lot there and used it for the rest of my career. But I'd be as happy going back to do that today. It's like when I go work in my stores here in Nero. When I joined Nero, I intentionally stayed working to get my black T-shirt. But everyone goes into the stores when they join for a few days as part of the kind of familiarisation. But I was really keen to actually stay with it and get my qualifications as a barista. Partly because actually that's how you really learn what the people that you're leading do. And it really informs you making decisions, around the management table when you've actually done the real job. And also because I really enjoy it. I really enjoy that transactional thing, working in the bar, did that at uni and stuff. So I guess that first experience was very significant.
How empowering is that? Because I use the saying, you can't be on the top floor, you don't understand the shop floor.
I think it's so important.
And the amount of leaders that I see that don't go into store and actually experience what's going on.
Yeah, and I think for anyone particularly people tuning into this podcast, either early in their careers or thinking about their careers, it's so important. And not only when you're the CEO, but all the way up, because if you have an appreciation of when the product you're working for at the point of delivery or consumption, if you're working for Mars or whatever, what people think about when they're eating your particular product, but particularly in the service business where you actually, hotels and my kind of world and restaurants and cafes, it just completely opens your eyes. Understanding, if you like, of the practical reality is so useful, and therefore you make better decisions, I guess. An interesting fact about me is that I, at the age of 16, was the youngest ever qualified football referee, which is mainly because I couldn't play football very well, and my school was very football centred, and the only way to really get into it was to do refereeing. So
how important is actually work experience? And actually, if you are from coming out of uni, or whether you're coming onto an apprenticeship, how is it important to just take a moment to realise that you don't know everything.
Yeah.
And you need to learn from those around you.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because there's many challenges, I think, about going into the workplace for young people today. One of the best things, though, is what's really changed over my career is the expectation that you will make a decision and stick with it for 10 years is completely gone, right? You can chop and change. You can test the different waters. So you might think, coming out of college, whatever school, I want to be in marketing, I want to be in sales, I want to be in operations. And as you said, the best thing is to try and get some experience those things. And as whatever the brand or company is really, and see whether you like it. And what I really noticed actually in my sector, particularly in the frontline service world, is that people definitely do split between those that genuinely take pleasure in giving service, in their own innate personality. They enjoy it. I've always enjoyed sort of serving. Now it definitely gives me a buzz, and some people quite legitimately don't. They find it somewhat humiliating or somewhat demeaning that they're having to serve you, and that they're somehow makes them feel sort of secondary. So when we recruit, both here and in previous companies, we're always saying, look for, you can train the technical stuff, recruit for character, which what that really means is, in very simple language, recruit for people who like it, who just genuinely enjoy other people, and be careful, because if they don't, or they'll find it much more difficult, won't be happy. So that's part of it. Know what your personality is, I think, in choosing your career path, but also then even if you're not sure. And I think it's most young people that I meet actually and sort of talk to and mentor around this, and I always try whenever someone approaches me for often it's friends of friends or sons, daughters of people and they want some advice. I always say, don't worry, you haven't got to have all the answers. The great news, no one didn't expect you to be in that job for that long anyway. Just test the waters, try and get experience, but and I know you talk a lot about this in your own work, reading, is that you have to be committed. It's more important is your attitude actually, more than the experience in a sense. If you're willing to work really hard and commit and engage and get out that duvet off and, somehow get your phone out of your bedroom, which is one of the hardest things I think for most of us, so that you're not up really, really late. You get to bed, but all those disciplines come in, that you'll be so much more successful in whatever you choose to do.
I want to talk a little bit about what happened after M&S. So you went to M&S, you went on to the management, They gave you fantastic training.
Yes.
Where did you go next?
Well, in fact, I think M&S still do this. That their management course has always had 2 points of entry, one after A levels and one after uni. So I did the one after A levels. I kind of knew I already had the university place, and I had deferred it. And I suppose I was just a bit unsure. I've always been like that, as I mentioned before, that kind of rapid. This is the environment. And I thought I don't want to go straight to university. I want to do some work first. And I thought I might have gone back to them after university. But literally, I was walking down the high street in St. Albans, where I was then working as my first store in the management scheme. And I saw this advert. You sometimes see these, some of the older listeners might remember these. It was like careers offices for the forces. And they had there was a naval one in St. Albans, a big poster in the window of some exotic location. And basically the sort of slogan was, it was attracting students really. Go to university, get paid, and travel the world. Was essentially the takeout of the advertising. So I thought, that sounds quite cool. I was about to go off to uni that stage. They knew I was leaving. I was thinking, it'll be interesting living without any income at all. And then I still love travel. So I went in and cut a long story short, I applied and ended up joining the Navy and then going off to university.
Wow. And what did joining the Navy teach you?
I think what's fantastic about all the forces actually is just the leadership training. If you think about M&S as a kind of business training, kind of management type training, how the business works, where you put your products to sell, all that kind of stuff. The forces was all about leadership training. I was quite lucky because I was at Leeds University, and the way it works in the Navy is that each ship in the Navy is attached to a city, and the Ark Royal, which was a brand new aircraft carrier back in the late 80s, was attached to Leeds. So I went on I was at Leeds, therefore I went to that ship and I went on all these amazing deployments. And I also got exposed to some of the best leaders in the Navy because they were on that top ship, if you like. So I was lucky and I learned a lot about just the way that the sort of structures and disciplines and leadership practices that you need to have to run what is a 1,000-person ship,
And what are some of those leadership techniques that people tuning in might go, oh, actually, when I want to become a leader, or there might be some junior managers that are just stepping into management now, or a young person who wants to be CEO in the future?
Yeah.
What are those?
I think what they instill in you, and it isn't their words, it's something I've developed myself reflecting back on it, is they recognise that effective leaders in whatever discipline you're going to be in, and indeed at whatever level, need to have 3 kind of core capabilities and competencies. And when and it's actually quite powerful, this, because when you're recruiting, you need to make sure that you're looking for these. And I'll come back to that in a sec. But the 3 are intellect, energy, and empathy. So in essence, you need to have the brain power to do whatever the job is that you're doing, and then equally you have to have the kind of drive, if you like, to stay committed and be resilient in order to do whatever job you're doing, and you need to have the empathy to the people, the ability to relate to other people, to do it without offending people. The problem is, many people have the intellect, and a combination of 2 of them. They have the intellect and the energy. They're super smart and super driven, but they just piss everybody off because they get really insensitive to others. Equally, they can be super lovely, full of empathy, and very energetic. But if you haven't got the brain power, especially in modern businesses or any work actually, in public or private sector, where there's so many different things coming at you in work and in life. That's one of the challenge, the ups and downs of social media, isn't it? So much stuff coming at you. If you can't process all the information and stay focused, then you can be as lovely as, really empathetic, but you're not going to succeed.
Agreed.
And I learned for a long time, I used to do, I'm sure people relate to this, the classic kind of way to interview somebody is you have all these different sort of standardized questions and stuff, and you're looking at someone's CV and you're kind of asking them questions about the jobs. And you really basically you're asking them things that are either already on the CV or anyone could fact check. What you really need to be doing is asking questions to assess them against the intellect, energy, empathy thing. And that I got that from the Navy. They were very good at that. They were very good in their own recruitment, in their own sort of training, to make sure that they were both attracting people that had. And you're never going to be brilliant at all 3 of those, by the way, I should say. So it's fine not to be. You're going to be maybe really strong at 2 and less strong at 1, but you need to have evidence of the 3rd one. You can't be absent. And the forces both recruited that way, and then of course they cultivate it in the training. Caffè Nero is fully staffed by people that work for the company, all part of one family. Most brands in our market are franchised, and we're not. We're all part of one big family, and we try and act and behave like that.
And how do you be aware? I'm a big believer, be self-aware. I call it community sense. Have community sense to the community you're walking into, whether that's someone's store, whether that's someone's home, or whether that's a new community that you don't understand. Have community sense. And you only have community sense if you know who you are and you know what your values are, and you know, and you're willing to learn and have that empathy and have that resilience. But how does one really reflect when they don't really know what their values are? They don't know what empathy really means. They've not got values. How do they know how to move forward?
Well,
do they need to put themselves in front of someone who can give them that tough love? Because I'm a big believer, be kind over being nice. And kindness is completely different than being nice. And kindness is sometimes going, this is where the area you need improvement, and this is how you can do it, rather than, oh, you're amazing.
Without wanting to oversimplify it, I think the truth is, when you boil it down, but you know, all of us, both when we were raised by our family, whoever raised us, our parents, or who are guardians, or whoever's looking after us, and through into work, and through into adult life, and through into later adult life, we all need a combination of love and discipline, boundaries. Unless you put frameworks around, you know, people, and we are quite nervous about that. But if I've got 4 kids. I'm so pleased. When I look at parents today, trying to parent, I mean, I had 3 boys very close together and a girl. If we hadn't been super strict with those 3 boys in the early years, goodness knows how they would have turned out. If we just smother them with love, let them have their own way, basically just let them get on with it, then it would have been a disaster. And to an extent in the workplace, it's a bit of the same. But in the sense that you want to be in a culture where, however big or small the company is, where its values are good, by which we mean it wants to do the right thing, it wants to treat its staff well, it wants to do the right thing for its customers, it wants to have honesty and integrity, and in my experience, virtually all the companies do, but it has to have boundaries around it. And probably the most recent example of this, actually, which is quite interesting, where we lost the way a bit between the kind of liberally sort of like, let's listen to the staff and just let it drift, and the boundary was COVID and work from home. And immediately post-COVID, I used to sit in CEO meetings, people would say, well, you know, we've surveyed our staff, and, you know, the vast majority of our staff all are very happy working from home. And I used to say, well, hold on, you're not running a democracy. You're a leader. If you don't have your people together, you don't create a community amongst your staff. And what about your young people in that survey? I bet everyone who was voting yesterday at home was probably 35 plus, right? And anybody who was like between about 20 and 30 was wanting to have a community in the office. You know, your job is not to take the democratic majority. Your job is to build a culture. And I think that's a great example. The boundary, if you like, in that example, is doing the right thing, because we know you can't run a successful organisation in the public sector or the private sector without bringing people together physically to chat, to build relationship.
I say, you know,
I think that's a harsh.
I say to young people, if you've got less than 5 years experience, get as much airtime,
yes, exactly,
face to face with people around the organisation as much as it lets you.
Yeah.
There's nothing more than having a quick cup of tea or looking someone in the eye and saying, what do you do in your department?
Exactly right. You're so right. And equally, I say to people who are thinking, oh, I'd much rather stay at home 4 days a week. Yeah, part of your job is to train the next generation. And you know what? You'll be happier by doing that. And this is back to the values thing. You know, what really makes us happy, actually, is not, you know, for me personally, it's not actually knocking the numbers out of the park and seeing some spreadsheet looking really great. Actually, if I look at my legacy, what's made me happiest is when I built a strong team, helped people develop their careers, helped them move on, got them through difficult sort of phases, and left something meaningful. And equally, individual to individual, by coming back into the office most of the week, not necessarily every day of the week, but most of the week, and being there to help support the younger people, you're going to have a much more high job satisfaction than sitting on your backside at home, you know, doing your work on your computer and watching daytime TV in between meetings. I mean, that's a harsh truth, And that's my point about love and boundary. We have to, and the role of the leader, be it the leader in the home or whatever there, is to actually try and get that balance right, I think.
I want to talk a little bit about these 10 Fs. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about the 10 Fs, your formula to 10 Fs, and what do they mean? And over to you.
Well, I think that when you've had a fair amount of experience in business or, just in work generally, and you get involved, as I like to do, in coaching and leadership training and speaking and sharing, you're always looking for kind of like frameworks to share nuggets of information that can be done in a kind of half an hour sort of slot, right? And I for a long time I've talked about a very simple framework, which is quite academic in a sense. That sort of says essentially, as a leader, whether a small team or a bigger team, you need to think about 4 key things. You need to think about planning and narrative. What's your sort of strategy for the business you're running? What's your narrative to explain that to the people? So everyone's clear on the direction, the roadmap where you're going. That's one quadrant. The second quadrant is about people. Make sure you're recruiting the right people. Think about how you recruit. We talked a bit about intellect, energy, empathy, but the whole people piece is obviously really key. The third piece is process, third quadrant, which is so even if you've got great people and you've got all the plan, you need to have ways for the team to engage. And most companies have some form of matrix these days. You don't duplicate every function in every part of the country or world. You tend to have expertise in marketing or sales or development, and they have to work across multiple units. You need some kind of process for that engagement to work well and not fall out. And then the fourth bit, which is about the most interesting. So you can do all those things really well. They're quite left brain, those activities. But the fourth part of the quadrant is much more right hand. That's relationship. And this is a bit I think is often the difference between good to great in terms of leadership, because relationship, curiously, is the real secret sauce really that makes your team and you really become high performing, and you as the leader really set the tone for that. And quite counterintuitively, what I've learned over the years is that great leaders, you imagine they're going to be super strong, know it all, really leading from the front and everything. Actually, to really build a great team, it's often the inverse. It's actually being willing to show vulnerability. If you follow that strictly, really push yourself to get closer into relationship with your team, move to a coaching leader rather than a sort of a slightly remote thing, you can really transform an organization and a team. So that's a
framework.
That's the kind of framework. The 10 Fs thing is another sort of version of, but a little bit more intimate, a bit more personal, because that's all I've always said that you need to do that. This is much more, here's my own set of experiences, which speaks a bit to that vulnerability piece, because you're sort of sharing what you think. And it literally is a series of 5 personal things and 5 leadership things. And I haven't got really more time to go through all of them now, but within there are some interesting ones. So, on the personal stuff, I talk a lot about fun and friendship, which is kind of like this is back to this question we discussed at the beginning, which is, you need to enjoy what you're doing in work, right? Not every single moment of every day. And you have a responsibility, obviously, in the way that you approach your working space to help get to that place of having fun. But if you're really doing something you don't enjoy, then you're not going to be very productive over time. And that's the importance of trialing something and getting into it. But also being willing to create friendships. Less so today, but earlier in my career particularly, there's a lot of talk about work-life, private life, work-life, home-life balance, and there's 2 separate spaces. And I'm Jack Parsons at work here, and I'm Jack Parsons and I completely hate all that. I don't believe, in my experience, again, people might not agree, but in my experience, you are one person, and you're at your best as a leader when you're your genuine, authentic self. So you can't possibly have a private life over here and a work life over there, given how much time you spend in the work life. I'm much more kind of fusion.
Be you, right?
With the two, then you'll have, and therefore friendships are very important. In that space, I talk a little bit about something which I don't often talk about because it's quite sensitive space. Of another one of the Fs is around faith, and it's never. I don't think it's anyone's job to tell somebody what they should believe. But if I'm honest, for me personally, the framework of my faith has been an enormously important stabilizing influence, because and it took me quite a long time to realize, actually, because I became a Christian quite early on. And by the way, I think this is relevant whether someone's Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist,
Absolutely.
even humanist, actually. I think there's a faith framework in there. For me, I kind of got the macro picture quite early on. I did something called an alpha course that some of your listeners will have heard of, and I thought I got the big picture. But it wasn't until mid-career, and I was really struggling. And one night I was having to go there the next day and basically let go quite a lot of people. I was like, oh God, hell. Oh. And actually, I really felt this massive sense of like, at last, you realise that the faith is actually something deeply relevant and day to day, not just birth, death, marriage, you know what I mean? Baptism. And that was quite a transformational moment for me. And then on the work side, things like, one of the other really interesting F's I got there is fragility, which is this idea that often you feel, I see this time and time again, often with very senior people, they think they need to be the smartest person in the room. So when they recruit, often in their subconscious, they're almost looking for someone that's really good, but not better than them. And because they want to make sure when they're sat around the table that they're surrounded by people that they somehow are kind of controlling a little bit. And luckily I've never thought that, but I've become much more active in looking for it, because I think that's the inverse of what you should do. I've always tried to find, one, understand what you're most good at, and then find people that complement you. And in doing so, you create this incredibly emboldened and empowered unit around you. And I think that's another really thing. But for some reason, many people feel that they'll look less good if one of their
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's a really interesting psychology. And that's why I call it out, is to face into it. So the interesting fact around hospitality is that more people are employed in this industry, retail hospitality, than pretty much as many as any other sector, yet we're the only industry that has no kind of government minister or representation.
We've only got time for a few more questions. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about, what do you think has been your invisible success that you can't find on your LinkedIn, you can't find anywhere? People may not know it, but what do you believe has been your invisible success in your career, to starting at M&S, to becoming a CEO of a fantastic organisation with over 6,000 staff, delivering delicious coffee? Like, what has been your success in leadership? What's your invisible success?
Well, that's kind of where you asked the question. I'm not sure I'd see it quite that. I'm certainly going to take credit for the success of Caffè Nero. It's the founder, Jerry Ford, and has been there for 27 years. I think I brought extra value, and as his first CEO, to actually modernize it, digitize it, strengthen it. I think that different leaders will have different definitions of what their invisible success might be. Why I've realized, I've tried to really focus in this as I thought about my next sort of career stage, working in non-executive capacity, is what do I do that's probably different or better than other people. The one thing I think I am quite good at is this area of narrative. So, writing a strategy for a business, actually, it's relatively, okay, it's not easy, but it's not that complicated. You can write a long deck about anything and write a strategy. Translating that into something which is simple and memorable. And I have a kind of one-page format based on a template with the vision and the purpose and the goals and the strategic areas of focus. And I've been the last 3 companies, I've been a lot of time crafting that ability. Enables you to therefore communicate your ambition to groups of people, be they boards or frontline staff, in a way that's quite compelling. And I think if I look back at what I've do in my sort of added value, a lot of it is around that. So whether it's actually putting it on paper as a strategy, whether it's about meeting prospective partners and being able to articulate what, in this case, Caffè Nero stands for and why we'd be a great partner. And then equally on a human level, just connecting with them as human beings, wherever they are, such that they kind of want to work with me, if that makes sense, because they quite enjoy my company. That, I think, is probably, that's kind of what the answer is for me.
My final question is what's your duvet flip? What gets you out of bed in the morning to flip the duvet? And you can't say it's coffee.
Yeah.
Because I know that's a standard practice.
But I can't even claim. I would think I'm the least knowledgeable person on coffee in my whole Caffè Nero. There's lots of real coffee experts, and I'm not one of them. And I'm not even a massive coffee drinker.
But it goes back to your point, hire people that are better than you.
And that's the credit of Jerry when I think that's what he did. My wife says I'm one of the most irritating people because I do actually literally bounce out of bed. I am the Duracell bunny. I'm on or off. I'm always even one of the dullest people. So I can, even though I'm quite an early riser, I naturally get up early. I'm quite back to our frameworks. I'm quite disciplined about doing exercise first thing, because I like having a glass of wine in the evening. So I'm terribly it's not like I'm a virtuous person. I have all kinds of terrible habits. But getting up and bouncing out isn't that difficult most of the time, because I'm always I enjoy that initial couple of hours in the morning before you actually sit down to whatever you're doing, a meeting or whatever it is. So what's underneath that really is, I think, back to my opening point, it's about people. So that's kind of the way I'm wired, I suppose.
Wow.
So the flip isn't so difficult. It's keeping going late in the evening is more difficult.
Well, it's a glass of wine and coffee, right?
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for your energy, for coming over to share your wisdom, your knowledge, being so bouncy and happy. You're giving me energy, and I have got a lot of energy myself. I just want to say thank you for your kindness.
Thank you, my pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Will.
Cheers.
Che vuoi gira largo da me, non sai che oramai è finita con te. Tu sei quella che mi fa passare soltanto